I'm 22 now. Been working the rails for a little over 2 years. First real shift came not long after I finished trade school, barely had the diesel grease washed off my hands before they stuck me out in the woods with a 70-ton engine and a guy I'd never met. Not much has scared me since that night, but I still don't take jobs anywhere near Cold Pines Spur. I work freight up real north. Iron Range country, where the wind off Lake Superior will cut through denim like razor wire. Our runs mostly service old lumber operations and half-shuttered mills. A lot of it's outdated spur lines, the kind nobody upgrades because there's not enough freight left to justify the cost. It's cold, it's slow, and it pays by the hour. I got hired on with Northern Timber and Rail right after I got certified. Started out of a depot near Violet Ridge. Minnesota, blink and you miss it. 1 bar, 2 gas pumps, and a diner that serves soup out of a coffee machine. I rent a room over a bait shop and live mostly on instant noodles and diner leftovers. That night, the one I keep coming back to, was 2 years ago. January, middle of a cold snap. One of those nights where your lungs sting just from breathing. The fog was so thick you could chew it. I was curled up in bed watching some dusty old detective rerun when my phone rang. Frank Holloway, my usual engineer, 62 years old, twice divorced, built like a mini fridge and just as warm. The guy was a lifer, started on steam, stayed for diesel, and outlived 3 locomotives of his hearing. "Hey, Frank," I answered. "What's going on?" His voice sounded off. Breathy, uneven, like he'd been pacing or had something stuck in his throat. "Jay, I'm not making the shift tonight."
Something came up.
Personal. I sat up. "You all right?" "I'm fine. Just not tonight, okay? Talk to dispatch when you get in. They'll pair you with someone." There was a weird pause. Then, sharply, "Don't half-ass the engine. I want that thing clean enough to eat off when I'm back." I laughed. "Yes, sir. No slacking. Got it. Be safe, all right?" He didn't reply. Just hung up. Something about the call bugged me. Frank wasn't the sentimental type, but his voice had this off-key edge to it, like something was crawling under his skin. I tried not to overthink it. By 7:30, I was dressed, packed, and headed into the whiteout. The fog had thickened to the point I couldn't see the end of my street. Everything was muffled, like the snow was absorbing sound. Even my boots sounded too quiet. When I checked in at dispatch, they paired me with a guy I'd never worked with before, Rob Talbot, 26, fresh out of the company's conductor training in Brainerd. Tall, buzz-cut, friendly enough. Wore a Red Wings beanie and talked fast, like a guy trying to prove he belonged. "You're with me tonight," he said, flipping through the manifest. "We're hauling empties out to Cold Pines Spur." "First time out there," I said. "Didn't even know it was still in use." He laughed. "Barely. The old Cold Pines mill runs on fumes these days. Maybe 1 or 2 night runs a week. Dispatch likes to send new guys there. Less traffic. Less pressure." I didn't love the idea of running into the woods on a barely used spur in zero visibility fog, but I wasn't about to complain. We rolled out just after 9:00 p.m. in GP 91543, a cranky old diesel electric that smelled like scorched belts and frozen rubber. Thing groaned like a haunted vending machine every time we picked up speed. The fog only got worse past mile 30. High beams barely cut through 5 feet of it. Everything looked like we were driving into a sheet of cotton. Inside the cab, we talked a little. Rob seemed chill, more into his phone than his throttle, but competent enough. I brewed weak coffee in my dented thermos and cracked a window for a smoke. Frank never let me smoke in the cab. Rob didn't even blink. I asked him if he'd run Cold Pines before. "Couple times," he said. "Quiet stretch. Middle of nowhere. No signals, no crossings, no wildlife except maybe a fox or 2. Then he added, without changing tone, "Some folks say it's haunted." You believe in that crap? Laughed it off. Only when the overtime dries up. We're on the clock, but technically there's no lunch break, just equipment inspection windows. Everyone knows the routine. You stop somewhere remote, park the engine, kill the lights, and pretend to check couplers for an hour or two while you nap. At 1:13 a.m., dispatch called in with the formal go-ahead. Engine 1543, Cold Pines Spur, authorized technical stop. Log inspection over. Rob eased us to a halt in the middle of nowhere. No lights, no sound. Just fog, pines, and the long, quiet hum of the cooling engine. He threw his boots up on the console and said, "Your turn to play, Inspector. Go hit it with the hammer, rookie." I grabbed my gear and stepped into the dark. The cold bit like a live wire. Even through my insulated gloves, I could feel it chew at my knuckles. The snow reached my shins. I walked the length of the engine, checking suspension, brake lines, couplers. Nothing looked off. Just a standard walk-around. I was heading back when something caught my eye off to the left. In the trees. Metal, faintly glinting. Almost buried. I stepped off the embankment, flashlight beam bouncing through the fog like it was underwater. Knees deep in snow, I pulled away a tangle of branches. A rusted metal number plate. Frostbitten. Bent, but still legible. GP9 211. Not our engine. Ours was 1543. This thing looked like it had been out here since the Carter administration. That's when I heard it. A snap behind me, like a frozen branch or a bone. I turned, swept my light across the trees. At first, I thought it was nothing until I saw them. Two pale reflections. Eye level. Not an animal, not human, just staring. They didn't move, didn't blink. And then, like someone cut the power, they vanished. No footfalls, no leaves, no sound, just gone. I gripped the number plate tighter and turned back toward the track, toward the engine. But it wasn't there. The headlamps were gone. The metal hum of the generator gone. Just trees. Just fog. And snow already starting to erase my footprints. At first, I thought I must have gotten turned around. Fog can do that mess with your sense of distance. But I knew I hadn't walked that far. I'd gone maybe 30, 40 yards off the embankment. The engine should have been right behind me. I spun in a slow circle. Trees. Fog. More trees. No rumble of diesel. No cab lights. No Rob, feet on the console, thumbing through his phone. Just me. Just white silence and the slow crunch of my own boots as I shifted my weight. Something in the air had changed. The cold was deeper now, not just freezing, but still. Heavy, like the snow itself was holding its breath. I started walking, number plate tucked under my arm, scanning for any sign of the train. Every step felt heavier. The snow wasn't deeper, but my boots sank like the ground was softer. Off. Wrong. After maybe 10 minutes of stumbling, I stopped. And that's when I noticed something else. No sound. No trees creaking. No wind. Not even the distant hum of power from the engine. Dead silence. Total. That's when I heard it again. Crunch. But not mine. Not footsteps either. Something different. Wet. Like tendons grinding. Like a joint bending the wrong way. Then another curve. Like a neck being twisted too far. Bone on bone. I raised the flashlight and slowly turned toward the sound. There, in the fog maybe 10 yards out, two glowing eyes. Same height as before, but closer. Too close. And this time, they moved. Not forward. Not side to side. They drifted.
Circling.
Drawing wide, slow eights in the fog. like a predator testing the shape of its prey. I didn't breathe. My heart punched against my ribs, adrenaline flooding my legs. I whispered to myself, "Run." And I did. I tore through the trees, crashing over roots and frozen brush, snow soaking into my coveralls. I didn't care. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My brain wouldn't let me. Every instinct screamed the same thing: don't stop. Don't turn. Don't let it catch up. Branches scraped my shoulders. I slipped, slammed into a trunk, righted myself, kept moving. I didn't know which way the tracks were anymore. Everything looked the same: fog, trees, white on white on white. Then I saw a break in the tree line. The embankment, the ballast slope of the railbed. I scrambled up like a rat from a flood, boots slipping on frozen gravel. Made it to the middle of the tracks and stopped, panting, dizzy. And just like that, the feeling lifted. A flicker of relief. But something was wrong. I turned, looked both ways. No engine, no lights, no train. Just rusted rails stretching in both directions, covered in snow. The ties beneath me weren't concrete. Like on our spur line, they were old wood, splintered, weather-worn, creosote-soaked. I frowned and kicked at one of them with my boot. The wood cracked under the toe-dry rot. These tracks hadn't seen service in decades. No fresh polish on the rail tops. No warmth from metal that had been under an engine minutes ago. This wasn't our line. I started walking, heading the way I thought the train had stopped. Fog swallowed everything beyond 20 feet. My flashlight bounced along the rail, catching flakes and shadows that shifted the more I focused on them. Then I saw at a mile marker. Old concrete post, faded, chipped, mounted low to the ground, half buried in snow. I wiped the frost off the metal plate. Mile marker 211. I froze. That couldn't be right. Cold Pines Spur was only 15 miles long. It didn't have numbered mile markers like this. And our manifest listed no marker 211 anywhere on the route. This track didn't exist. Not anymore. I stood there, heart racing, trying to make sense of it when I heard it again. Kirk. Right behind me. Not just near me, right behind me. So close, I could feel it in my own spine. My stomach turned cold. I reached slowly into my vest pocket, fingers brushing the hammer. Grip slick with nervous sweat. I turned and saw it. It stood on the rail, not moving, not blinking. Human shaped, but not human. Tall, gaunt, bone pale in the fog, wearing what looked like a torn nightgown or dress. One arm hung at an unnatural angle, elbow reversed, fingers twitching. Its skin looked damp, stretched too thin across the joints. Its head tilted, then twisted, vertebrae cracking one by one as it rotated not just to the side, but backward, slowly, like it was dislocating its own neck to look at me. The face was shattered. Bits of skull showed through a torn scalp. Long strands of gray hair clung to frozen skin. One side of its mouth was torn open to the cheek, a permanent grin. Teeth yellowed and too many, and the eyes, bright, white, glowing green, from within locked on me like it already knew how I'd taste. But worse than all of that, it was holding something, wrapped in old, wet newspaper, a bundle, a shape. Two tiny legs dangled out. A baby. Something inside me snapped. I shouted, raised the hammer, ready to strike, knowing I'd die but wanting to do something before it took me apart. And then, a blur behind it. A hand. A hammer. Crack. Steel connected with the thing's skull sunk deep into the temple. A splash of dark fluid sprayed out, sizzling against snow. The creature shrieked, not with pain, but like it had been insulted. It jerked, twisted around at something behind it, and without a sound bolted into the trees. The woods swallowed it instantly. I stood there breathing like a cornered dog, hammer still raised. and from the fog stepped a man, old, wearing a faded conductor's uniform, navy blue with silver trim, cap pulled low, heavy coat, old-style boots, a metal lantern swinging from one hand. He had a wide, serious face, thick white mustache, eyes like glass bottle green, steady, focused. He looked at me, then down at the fallen number plate beside my boot. I hadn't realized I'd dropped it. He stooped, picked it up, brushed snow off it with one gloved hand. "You don't belong here, son." His voice was low, deep, like a freight train under throttle. Calm, but full of warning. This place don't take kindly to souvenirs. "You don't belong here, son." The old man's voice wasn't angry, but it wasn't friendly either. Like a stern uncle catching you somewhere you weren't supposed to be. He stared at the number plate in his hands, GP9 211, and his face changed. Not with fear. Not even surprise. Just resignation. Like he'd seen it before. Like it was expected. "You dropped this," he said. "You can keep it." He gave me a sharp look and stepped forward, placing the plate under one arm like it was his. Maybe it always had been. He looked me over. "You're with Holloway, right? Frank?" I blinked. Yeah. Not tonight, though. I got paired with... Doesn't matter." He waved it off. "You tell Frank, old man," Connor said. "Hello. Tell him I still remember what he owes me." My stomach twisted. "Wait," I said. "You're Connor?" He nodded once, crisp. "Used to run the 211 line, back before they tore it up. Before the Cold Pines reroute." My throat went dry. That number, the plate, the engine, the mile marker. It was all the same line. I stepped back, heart pounding again. "Is this? Are you?" "I'm what's left," he said, cutting me off. "Don't think too hard about it. Won't help." He turned and pointed back the way I'd come, only now I realized. I could see track lights in the distance. The fog had shifted. Just a little. "That's your line," he said. "Real one. Keep walking. Don't stop. Don't turn. And whatever you do," he looked at me, dead serious, "don't take anything with you." I looked down. The plate was gone from the snow, still tucked under his arm. Something about the way he held it, like it was more than metal. Like it was anchor. "Wait, what the hell was that thing?" I asked. "Her," he said, voice suddenly softer. "Some memories don't die, right? Some keep walking, screaming, crying for what they lost." He turned again, starting to disappear into the mist. "What did she lose?" He didn't stop walking. Everything. And then he was gone. I walked. I don't know how long. Maybe a mile, maybe 5 minutes, maybe an hour. But eventually, the fog thinned and I saw it. The engine, GP9 1543, sitting exactly where we'd parked it. Lights on, diesel humming, like nothing had ever happened. I climbed up fast, threw the cab door open, nearly tripping over myself. "Jesus!" Rob shouted, jumping. "Dude, where the hell were you?" I couldn't speak right away. My throat burned from the cold and fear and whatever the hell had just happened. I dropped into the seat and tried to breathe. "You're pale as hell," Rob said. "You okay? You fall or something?" I just nodded, slow. Inspection took longer than I thought. He gave me a weird look but didn't push. "We're almost done anyway. Dispatch just cleared us for reverse pull. Let's get the hell out to here before the weather gets worse." Music to my ears. We rolled back toward Violet Ridge. Trees on either side still looked the same, heavy, dark, breathless. But the further we got from mile marker 211, the easier it was to breathe. I didn't say a word the whole ride back. Rob didn't notice. He had earbuds in, scrolling something on his phone. When we hit the yard, we handed off the paperwork and clocked out. My hands were still shaking. At sunrise, I sat behind the depot with a cigarette I wasn't supposed to have. I watched the breath rise off my fingers and tried not to think about what I'd seen, what I'd felt. That's when I overheard the old-timers talking. There's this little makeshift smoke shack behind the yard office. Real classy sheet metal walls, bucket for a chair, and a cracked thermos someone left in 1998. But the guys love it. They say more truth gets passed around in that shack than in any union meeting. That morning, they were talking about Frank Holloway. He asked for the night off. First time in 20 years. He always goes quiet this time of year. You know what happened, right? Yeah, that old derailment. Cold Pines before the reroute. I leaned in just enough to hear, keeping my mouth shut. He was on that train, back when it was still the 211 line. His engineer Connor Reeves died keeping the brake engaged so Frank could jump. Yeah. Heard Frank sees him sometimes. Swears he's still out there. Well, hell, maybe he is. They laughed. The kind of laugh men use when they don't think it's funny but can't admit they're scared. I caught one of the mechanics later, Eli, and asked him straight, "You ever hear of GP9 number 211? He looked at me a long time. Yeah, he said finally. Came off the line in '59. Ran the Cold Pines Spur for about 15 years. Derailment killed the engineer. They pulled the rails after that. Didn't even salvage the engine, buried it out there. Buried? Ground was too unstable to haul it out. The car behind it, log carrier, was empty. Lucky." He paused. "Why, you ask?" I hesitated. "Saw something out there. A plate. Number matched." He stopped chewing. His jaw just hung there for a second. "Don't touch anything out there," he said quietly. "Don't bring anything back. Not even rust." Then he walked off. I put in for a transfer a week later, took a pay cut, moved back downstate. Smaller depot, safer routes. Frank retired that spring. I never saw him again. But sometimes, on nights when the fog rolls in thick and the engines hum just so, I think about mile marker 211, about the thing that walked out of the trees holding a dead child, about the man who warned me just in time, and about how close I came to joining them. I couldn't stop thinking about the plate. GP9 211. Old man Connor's train. Buried, not scrapped. Left to rot somewhere in that frost-bitten stretch of nowhere, entombed with whatever still walked those woods. I kept hearing the way he'd said it. Some memories don't die, right? I didn't sleep much that week. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that thing. Its neck bending backward. Its smile too wide. The limp bundle in its arms. I tried convincing myself it was a hallucination, hypothermia, fatigue, a stress dream. But there were things I couldn't explain. The number plate. The mile marker that didn't exist on any current map. The old man in the conductor's uniform, who shouldn't have been there, or couldn't. I spent 3 nights researching. Rail archives, crash logs, railfan forums. Anything I could dig up on Cold Pines Spur, mile marker 211, or engine 211 itself. Most of it was dead ends until I found a scanned clipping from a local paper dated January 17th, 1977. DERAILMENTORTHEIMEAINACLAINA. Early Sunday morning, a GP9 locomotive derailed near mile marker 211 on the Cold Pines Spur, resulting in the death of 57-year-old conductor Connor Reeves. Investigators cite missing rail anchors and loose ballast as possible causes. The assistant engineer, Frank Holloway, survived the incident with minor injuries. Eyewitness accounts indicate Reeves stayed in the cabin to manually engage the emergency brakes while instructing Holloway to evacuate. No other crew were on board. No cargo was being hauled at the time. My blood ran cold. It was all true. The derailment, the mile marker. Frank and Connor, he died holding the brake, keeping the engine from tumbling into the ravine with both of them on board. There was one more name mentioned in the article. A short, sad footnote at the bottom. The incident occurred less than a mile from where a woman and infant were struck and killed by a northern timber locomotive in 1963. The location has long been considered a troubled section of track by employees. No other details. No names. I dug deeper. Eventually, I found a digitized coroner's report, barely readable, yellowed scan, probably forgotten in some microfiche archive for decades. Name, Louise Everett. Date of death, February 3, 1963. Cause, blunt force trauma consistent with railway impact. Notes, victim was found on tracks with deceased infant in arms. History of postpartum psychosis noted. Next of kin, James Everett, engineer, Northern Timberline. That was it. She wasn't just a casualty. She was the engineer's wife. She'd lost her mind, took their baby, and walked into her husband's line of travel. He was running the train that night. There was nothing he could do. She waited for him and made him watch. Suddenly, the pieces started falling into place. That thing I'd seen, the dress, the twisted limbs, the baby, it wasn't random. It wasn't just a ghost. It was her. Louise Everett, still walking the tracks, still cradling what was left, still screaming quietly for something no one could give back, and the 211 line, that stretch of rail, had soaked it all in. The grief, the trauma, the broken metal and shattered people. Connor died trying to hold it together. Frank survived and never went back. The company rerouted everything away from that section not long after. Official reason? Structural instability. Unofficially, the crews just stopped going. Too many stories. Too many close calls. Too much wrong. Even the new spur, Cold Pines, was built to bend around that area. Avoid the old scar. But sometimes, on long nights in the right fog, you still cross it. I thought about confronting Frank, about going to his house or calling him just to ask what he really saw that night in '77. But something stopped me. Maybe I didn't want to hear it. Maybe I already knew. Instead, I waited a few days, then went back to the shop. There was an old locker in the far corner of the depot. Rusted, padlock busted. Used to belong to one of the retirees, the kind of guy who never threw anything out. Inside were stacks of manuals, parts catalogs, faded engineer caps, and pinned to the back wall, half covered in dust, a photo. 2 men standing in front of a diesel engine. GP9 211. Clean, shiny, new. One man I didn't recognize. The other unmistakably Frank Holloway. Young.
Smiling.
Alive. I don't know what possessed me to take it, but I did. I slipped the photo into my wallet and left the depot without saying a word. That night, I had the first nightmare in weeks. A screech of metal, the clang of a brake lever, a woman's voice whispering something I couldn't understand, and in the fog, a lantern, swinging, getting closer. I told myself I was done, that whatever happened out there on that stretch of Cold Pines Spur was a one-time thing, a bad dream, a cold night gone worse. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not the thing in the trees, not the dead child, not even Connor. It was the number that haunted me. 211, the mile marker, the engine, the date on the old newspaper article, the sound of the radio transmission that hadn't been broadcast in 40 years. I started to realize something. That number wasn't random. It was a pattern, a mark, a grave. 3 weeks passed. Then the nightmares started again. But this time, they didn't feel like memories. They felt like instructions. I'd wake up cold and sweating with that number in my head like a countdown. So I did the one thing I promised myself I wouldn't do. I went back. I didn't take a rail vehicle. I drove up past Eli in my truck alone. No company vest. No gear. Just a flashlight, boots, and my coffee thermos. January again, of course it was.
Same kind of night, bitter cold, fog so thick it turned the headlights to milk.
I parked near the split where Cold Pines Spur diverged from the main. There's no signage anymore. No reason for anyone to go past that point, except me. I walked. The trees were silent. Fog blanketed everything. The deeper I went, the more I felt like I was walking through a tunnel, walls made of pine, roof made of dead air. And then I saw it. The rails. Same as before, rusted, warped, forgotten. And just ahead, like it had been waiting, mile marker 211. A chipped concrete post with a rust-stained steel faceplate. Crooked in the ground, but still standing. I knelt and brushed snow off the base. There were scratch marks, rough and uneven. Letters, almost worn away. L-O-U-I. That was it. Like someone started writing L-O-U-I-S-E and stopped. Or never finished. A cold wind pushed through the trees, and then I heard the crunch behind me. I turned fast. Connor stood at the tree line. Same long coat. Same old lantern. Eyes sharper this time. He walked toward me, slow but sure, and stopped beside the mile marker. Back again, he said. I need answers, I told him. He nodded, like he expected that. The 211 engine went off the track right here, he said. Back in 77. You already know that. I do. What you don't know, he continued, is that this marker, this stretch of rail, wasn't always mile 211. I blinked. What? He pointed at the post. When the company laid new rail out here in the 60S, they renumbered segments. Shortcuts. Accounting tricks. They moved the numbers around. But she didn't forget. I felt the hair rise on my arms. So the number, she took it, he said, tied it to the place, made it hers. And the engine? GP9 211, he said with a bitter laugh. Guess what mile we reached when she stepped onto the tracks? Mile 211. Of course it was. She waited for him there. Her husband. The engineer. He looked up at me, dead serious. That number doesn't just mark a place. It marks a cycle. That engine didn't derail by accident. It was pulled off, brought home, back to her. So it's like a loop? He shook his head. No. Worse. It's a route. A scheduled run. She's not stuck here. She's still traveling it. Over and over. Then he looked at me hard. And now you've stepped on it. Fog thickened again. From the distance came a low hum, not mechanical, more like electricity in the teeth. Connor looked back down the track. It's coming, he said. She's always on time. What do I do? Get off the line and don't look back. But what about you? He smiled sadly. I never got off the train. I ran. Didn't ask how. Didn't think. Just ran. Snow kicked up behind me as the trees blurred past. That hum grew louder, deeper, and beneath it, I heard screaming. A woman's voice. A child crying. A conductor shouting to pull the brake. I reached the crossing road near the split and dove behind the tree line just as the fog surged forward like a wave swallowing everything. Then it passed, and everything went quiet again. I didn't go back. Not for a long time. I transferred routes, took yard shifts, never went north again. But a few days ago, I got a package. No return address. No stamp. Inside, a small metal tag. Scorched. Pitted. Letters barely visible. But still there. Mile marker 212. No note. Just that. I don't sleep much these days. Because now I understand it's not a haunting, it's a timetable. And she's still making her run. 1 mile at a time.